The wreck of the Old 97 was an American rail disaster involving the Southern Railway mail train, officially known as the Fast Mail, while en route from Monroe, Virginia, to Spencer, North Carolina, on September 27, 1903. Due to excessive speed in an attempt to maintain schedule, the train derailed at the Stillhouse Trestle near Danville, Virginia, where it careered off the side of the bridge, killing 11 onboard personnel and injuring 7 others. The wreck inspired a famous railroad ballad, which was the focus of a convoluted copyright lawsuit but became seminal in the genre of country music. Wreck. The wreck of Old 97 occurred when the engineer, 33-year-old Joseph A. Steve Brodie, at the controls of Southern Railway 1102, was operating the train at high speed in order to stay on schedule and arrive at Spencer on time. The Fast Mail had a reputation for never being late. Locomotive 1102, a 10-wheeler 4-6-0 engine built by Baldwin Locomotive Works in Philadelphia, had rolled out of the factory in early 1903, less than a year before the wreck. On the day of the accident, Old 97 was behind schedule when it left Washington, D.C., and was 1 hour late when it arrived in Monroe, Virginia. When the train arrived in Monroe, the train crew was switched, and when it left Monroe, there were 17 people on board. The train personnel included Joseph A. Brodie, the engineer, dubbed Steve by his friends, John Blair, the conductor, A.C. Clapp, a fireman, John Hodge, a student fireman, sometimes known as Dodge in other documents, and James Robert Moody, the flagman. Also aboard were various mail clerks including J. L. Thompson, Scott Chambers, Daniel Flory, Paul Arganbright, Louis Spies, Frank Brooks, Percival Indermauer, Charles Reams, Jennings Dunlap, Napoleon Maupin, J. H. Thompson, and W. R. Pinckney, an express messenger. When the train pulled into Lynchburg, Virginia, Wentworth Armistead, a safe locker, boarded the train, so at the time of the wreck, there were 18 men aboard. At Monroe, Brodie was instructed to get the Fast Mail to Spencer, 166 miles, 267 kilometers, distant, on time. The scheduled running time from Monroe to Spencer was 4 hours, 15 minutes, an average speed of approximately 39 miles per hour, 63 kilometers per hour. In order to make up the 1-hour delay, the train's average speed would have to be at least 51 miles per hour, 82 kilometers per hour. Brodie was ordered to maintain speed through Franklin Junction, an intermediate stop normally made during the run. The route between Monroe and Spencer ran through rolling terrain, and there were numerous danger points due to the combination of grades and tight radius curves. Signs were posted to warn engineers to watch their speed. However, in his quest to stay on time, engineer Brodie rapidly descended a heavy grade that ended at the 45-foot-high, 14 m, Stillhouse Trestle, which spanned Stillhouse Branch. He was unable to sufficiently reduce speed as he approached the curve leading into the trestle, causing the entire train to derail and plunge into the ravine below. The flames that erupted afterwards consumed the splintered debris of the wooden cars, and it was very hard for the local fire department to extinguish the blaze. The investigation that followed was greatly hampered by the fire and the few witnesses to the incident. Of the 11 men who died, 9 were immediately killed, and 7 were injured. Among the deceased were the conductor Blair, engineer Brodie, and flagman Moody. The bodies of both firemen were recovered, but they were mangled so badly they were unrecognizable. There were several survivors of the wreck who believed they stayed alive because they jumped from the train just before the fatal plunge. Among the 3 survivors was J. Harris Thompson of Lexington. Harris was a mail clerk who served on the Southern Railroad. He later retired on May 1, 1941. W. R. Pinckney, the express messenger, who also survived, went home to Charlotte, North Carolina, and immediately resigned after his life-changing experience. Two other survivors were Jennings J. Dunlap and M. C. Maupin. They did not resign, although they started in new departments. Dunlap went to work on a train that ran between Washington and Charlotte, while Maupin worked at the Charlotte Union Station. Only a fraction of the mail had survived, including a large case filled with canaries that managed to escape and fly to safety. Engine 1102 was recovered, repaired, and it went on to perform further duties until it was dismantled in July 1935. The day after the wreck, Vice President Finley made a speech in which he said, "The train consisted of 2 postal cars, 1 express, and 1 baggage car for the storage of mail." Eyewitnesses said the train was approaching the trestle at speeds of 30 to 35 miles an hour. The Southern Railway placed blame for the wreck on engineer Brodie, disavowing that he had been ordered to run as fast as possible to maintain the schedule. The railroad also claimed he descended the grade leading to Stillhouse Trestle at a speed of more than 70 miles per hour, 110 kilometers per hour. Several eyewitnesses to the wreck, however, stated that the speed was probably around 50 miles per hour, 80 kilometers per hour. In all likelihood, the railroad was at least partially to blame, as it had a lucrative contract with the U.S. Post Office to haul mail, hence the train's name, and the contract including a penalty clause for each minute the train was late into Spencer. It is probably safe to conclude that the engineers piloting the fast mail were always under pressure to stay on time so that the railroad would not be penalized for late mail delivery. Southern Railway's Train 97 was in another fatal accident earlier in the year of 1903. On Monday, April 13, Train 97 left Washington, D.C., at 8 a.m., en route to New Orleans. As the train approached Lexington, North Carolina, it collided with a boulder on the track, causing the train to derail and ditch, killing the engineer and fireman. The locomotive that was pulling the train is unknown. Southern number 1102 had yet to be delivered to the railroad at that time. Ballad. The wreck of the old 97 served as inspiration for balladeers, the most famous being the ballad first recorded commercially by Virginia musicians G. B. Grayson and Henry Witter. Vernon Dalhert's version was released in 1924, Victor record number 19427, sometimes cited as the first million-selling country music release in the American record industry, with Frank Ferrara playing guitar and Dalhert playing harmonica. Since then, Wreck of the Old 97 has been recorded by numerous artists, including Dalhert himself in 1924 under the name Sid Turner on Perfect 12147, the Statler Brothers, feat. Johnny Cash, Charlie Levine of the Levine Brothers, Pink Anderson, Logold, David Holt, Flat and Scruggs, Woody Guthrie, Pete Seeger, Johnny Cash, Chuck Reagan, Hank Williams III, Patrick Skye, 9 Pound Hammer, Roy Acuff, Boxcar Willie, Lonnie Donegan, The Seekers, Ernest Stoneman and Kala Brewer, Carolyn Hester, Burt Southwood, and Hank Snow. The music was often accompanied by a banjo and a fiddle, while the lyrics were either sung, crooned, yodeled, whistled, hummed, recited, or chanted. The song rivaled that of Casey Jones for being the #1 railroading song of all time. The ballad was sung to the tune of The Ship That Never Returned, written by Henry Clay Work in 1865. Originally, the lyrics were attributed to Fred Jackson Louis and co-author Charles Noel. Louis claimed to have written the song the day after the accident, in which his cousin Albion Clapp was one of the 2 firemen killed. Louis worked in a cotton mill that was at the base of the trestle, and also claimed to be on the scene of the accident pulling the victims from the wreckage. Musician Henry Witter subsequently polished the original, altering the lyrics, resulting in the version performed by Dalhert. In 1927 it was claimed that the author of Wreck of the Old 97 was local resident David Graves George, who was one of the first on the scene. David was a brakeman and telegraph operator who also happened to be a singer. Witnessing the tragedy inspired him to write the ballad. After the 1924 recording by the Victor Talking Machine Company was released, David Graves George filed a claim for ownership. On March 11, 1933, Judge John Boyd proclaimed that David G. George was the author of the ballad. Victor Talking Machine Company was forced to pay David $65,000 of the profits from about 5 million records sold. Victor appealed 3 times. The first 2 times, the courts ruled in favor of David. The third time it was reviewed by the nation's highest tribunal. The Supreme Court of the United States overruled the lower courts and granted Victor ownership of the ballad. Wreck of the Old 97 is 777 in the Roud Folk Song Index. The ballad clearly places the blame for the wreck on the railroad company for pressuring Steve Brodie to exceed a safe speed limit, for the lyric, on the Dalhart recording, begins, "Well, they handed him his orders in Monroe, Virginia, saying, 'Steve, you're way behind time, this is not 38 it is old 97, you must put her into Spencer on time.'" Popular culture. In Scarface, Ann Dvorak sings the song while playing it on the piano. During the late 1940s, a parody of the ballad was sung that mocked the ties that the folk singer Pete Seeger had to the Communist Party. The lyrics began, "Well, they gave him his orders up at party headquarters, saying, 'Pete, you're way behind the times, this is not 38, it is 1947, there's been a change in that old party line.'" An episode of the Suspense radio program, broadcast on March 17, 1952, and starring Frank Lovejoy, was loosely based on the ballad, which appears in snatches throughout the play. The facts of the wreck are changed, however, eliminating all but one fireman, all but one male car clerk, and adding 2 escaped killers. The ballad was referenced in the song Blood on the Coal, a folk parody song from A Mighty Wind, the mockumentary film from Christopher Guest. The reference seems to be a tribute to the ballad, although the wreck described in Blood on the Coal is an absurd one in which the train crashes into a coal mine. In the movie The Blues Brothers, the band is handed a list of songs to play at a gig. While the band is cleaning up, Elwood says, "Sorry we couldn't remember the wreck of the old 97. A version of the song, by Ramblin' Jack Elliott, is part of the ambient soundtrack to the video game Sid Meier's Railroads. The popular alt-country band Old 97s take their name from the ballad. In Andrew Lloyd Webber's musical Starlight Express, C.B. the Red Caboose claims that, among other things, the state police they don't suspect I got old 97 wrecked. In Shining Time Station's episode Happy Accidents, the Jukebox Band perform this song. Tex and Rex play the banjo together. Kingsley Amis quotes from the ballad in his novel Lucky Jim, 1954 Chapter 5. Lyrics. They gave him his orders in Monroe, Virginia. Sayin' Steve, you're way behind time. This is not 38, this is OL 97. You must put ER into Spencer on time. Steve, he said to his black and greasy fireman. Just shovel in a little more coal. And when we cross over White Oak Mountain, you can watch OL 97 roll. Oh, it's a mighty rough road from Lynchburg to Danville. For the line has a 3-mile grade. It was on that grade that he lost his air brakes. You can see what a jump that he made. He was goin' down grade makin' 90 mile an hour. When the whistle broke into a scream. He was found in the wreck with his hand on the throttle. All scalded to death by the steam. A telegram came from Washington Station. And this is how it read. That brave engineer who ran 97 is a lying in Danville, dead. So come all you ladies, you must take warnin'. From this time on and learn. Never part on harsh words with your true lovin' husband. For he may leave you, and never return.
Please subscribe and thanks for watching.